All right, everybody. Welcome back to Comics Only, the only podcast where comedians talk about comedy. My guest today is writer, comedian, and veteran of the Phoenix comedy scene, Chudier Gew.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I like that you added writer, comedian. Like
I say it about everybody because it has to be true for you to do comedy. I say writer every time because even if you're not like really writing, you are. You're thinking of words in your head and how they sound when they come 100%. Out of your mouth and how that's going to make people feel. That's writing to me, period.
Yeah, that's true. And it's like, the thing is I just say this funny because it's like so much of comedy is like, it's performance, so people don't look at the writing a lot, especially in our scene. Like, I feel like our scene goes through ebbs and flows, but we're not a writer-based scene. Yeah. If you're like a punchy comic who writes smart jokes, you're an idiot. You're gonna bomb so much. You're gonna be like, I think I'm bad at comedy. You know,
it's kind of funny to me how much comics here, I guess probably more new comics, but comics in general, don't realize how different you have to be in all of the different rooms. Like, there's a set you should bring to the club. That set's not going to work at Tempe Tavern, period. Yeah, you're just going to bomb your dick off if you run your club set there. Mm-hmm. So what do? You fucking learn how to riff. You make fun of people in the audience. You learn stage presence without working on your material. Mm-hmm. Or you fucking bomb. Like, but
yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah. And it's like, and I feel like the nice thing about our scene is like, you know, I only started here. I know you started off in Oregon and everything, but Phoenix is special in a lot of ways. I don't know how many other scenes have this. Maybe they do. We are surrounded by all these suburbs because Phoenix is so spread out.
It's huge.
Similar to like, you know, Southern California, like LA area. But we have so many different suburbs. And each suburb is a little different, where it's like Glendale is like a little more conservative blue collar. And then Scottsdale is like stuffy, rich whites. Yeah. And then you get downtown Phoenix, which is a nice mix of everybody.
It's like the most diverse place in Phoenix.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you get Tempe, which is like young college students.
But they're like pretty fun. They're kind of rowdy sometimes.
They're great.
They're fun.
And we have all these clubs. We have Stir Crazy. We have House of Comedy. We have Tempe Improv. And it's like performing in all these places and going just mics all around the scene and shows are all around the scene. It forces you to work your jokes in front of all different kinds of people. Yeah. Which a lot of scenes you don't get to do. That's why like some comics will only do like edgy material in very inviting crowds that like that shit. Right. And then maybe they'll go perform for a bunch of grandmas and they'll eat dicks. And they're like, oh, what's going on? They don't like me. And it's like, well, you want to perform.
They're a bunch of old people. Yeah. Like, maybe they're not supposed to.
maybe they're not supposed to at all. But maybe you should have tried your jokes around these types of people as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And the nice thing about that is because we are so spread out.
It's so
we all
fun
get to try them out in front of everybody.
Being here in a scene that is actually diverse instead of being in a scene that's just white people telling you how much diversity matters. Oh, yeah. It's so crazy, dude.
I feel that way about like, because, you know, obviously I'm a black comic. And I feel that way about certain black comics that pop and I'll watch their rise. And like they only pop in like alt-white rooms. That like, oh, you're almost a diversity hire, and they love because they have no black friends, and they know no black people.
They just do better shows. Sorry, I take shots on this podcast.
Taking swings. I don't go to that mic, so I don't have anything to lose.
No, they like me, but like I'm not gonna not make fun of like what it is.
And you should.
Yeah.
And those types of comics who like those black comics, I want to do those like white alty rooms that are very, and I say that because like those rooms are great, but they're very forgiving. Yes. And like they'll laugh. Like, you know, those white rooms where it's like I've noticed where if a room is almost exclusively white and a black comic says the N-word, they'll laugh every time.
Oh yeah.
Every time. I've done it before too.
I think it happened.
They laugh every time, and it's always an uncomfortable laugh, right? Because they're not comfortable with that word, which I understand.
Sure.
And I feel that way about like certain black comics coming from the alt rooms where it's like, you're not a good comic. Mm-hmm. I've seen good comics. You're not a good one, but you're performing in these like white rooms where you're the only black person. You're almost an anomaly. Right. You're like this golden cow where people are like, oh, fascinating. I get to see Negro over here talk about black things, you know, and they'll murder, but they're a trash comic.
It's
and then
like,
they go to
but
the
like,
other room.
why is it murdering? You know, it's like sometimes you got to look at
because it's racist and you don't laugh. All right, that's why it's murdering.
Oh man, how long have you been doing comedy now?
It'll be 4 years in 2 weeks.
4 years.
Yeah. I started January 23rd, 2020, 2 months before everything shut down. It was my senior year in college.
Okay. So you're young too.
No, because I took a couple of years off.
Oh,
before I
okay,
went to
sure.
college.
Yeah,
I'm 30.
I was gonna say, I think you say
Yeah,
older.
I'm 30. So
30 is about what
I finished
I guess
college
you
at
are.
like 26.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been doing comedy about the same length of time as you. I think May will be 5 years.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so grateful I started in Oregon and just like nobody really saw me when I was bad, you know.
That's true.
And then I got to like
develop.
move to a new scene and be like already pretty good. And
Yeah.
it made, you know, I didn't have to like struggle through like Matt Delgado tells the story of like how he was bad and then like got good, but he had to like convince everybody he was good.
That does happen.
Yeah,
Because I remember when Matt started, we started the same year, but like 11 months apart. So it's like, it's basically we're like a year apart. But
interesting. Yeah.
I remember when he started, he was a very funny guy off stage, and he was like very likable. And I think he just dropped out of college, and because so many comics drop out of college for stand up, and I would have if I wasn't a senior. You know, I was like, I spent so much money, I'm just gonna finish this out. But I remember he was funny off stage. On stage, he wasn't. But the reason why is because he never worked on his act. He wouldn't do mics a lot. He was hot and cold. And he's getting booked a ton. Because new comics, if you guys aren't aware, new comics get booked a lot because they can bring people. It's a currency at the end of the day. It's a business. So bookers, some of these bookers, it's their full-time job. So they want comics who can bring out 3, 4, 5, 10 people to a show because that's money in their pocket. Yeah. And I don't care how seasoned you are. If you can't bring anybody, they're like, well, I can't fill seats. So Joe Schmo is going to bring his whole entire family of 15, so I'm going to book him. Yeah. And so Matt got a lot of shows, but he wasn't really working on the stand-up portion. And then eventually he realized, okay, I got to actually like take it seriously.
Now he's one of the hardest workers.
And now he's one of the hardest workers. He's one of the best comics in the scene. He's very funny. Definitely. And I love seeing him get better. And so, yeah.
He came to my mic a couple times and I introduced him. I was like, there's nobody in the scene I respect more. It's Matthew Delgado. He's like, you got to stop bringing me up by that. Like, it feels so weird. I was like, all right, sorry.
Yeah, that's true. that is true. Certain like intros could be too
he's like, are we gonna fuck after this?
Too like complimentary to the audience. Like I remember Noah Flores. He's a funny comic.
I love Noah.
And he doesn't do it anymore. But he was one of the first friends I made doing comedy when I started. So it's bittersweet that he doesn't do it anymore. But I remember at El Charles, which was like my favorite mic, he would bring me up as this guy's a great writer, and then eventually he'd be like, "This guy's the best writer in Phoenix." But he genuinely meant that. He didn't mean it to be like facetious or anything.
He's just saying his thoughts.
And I'd be like, That's a lovely intro, but you can't bring me up like that because I go up and I'm like, so poo poo pee pee, and they're like, this guy's a genius, he's amazing, you know?
Yeah, this woman back in Eugene won like best comedian in Eugene in the local newspaper. So we started bringing her up by that, and she's like, "You have to stop. It's ruining all my sets. It's
really
setting the expectation way too high."
The audience, they have so many expectations. And you're like,
but we're all doing it because we're bitter we didn't win best comedian. So we're like, "Oh, give it up for the best comedian."
let's talk about that, Eric. Let's talk about bitterness in comedy.
Have I seen bitter recently?
Me and you are the epitome of bitter. Are you
I've
kidding
been
me?
talking about planning child porn on Aldo.
Listen, it wasn't us.
Dating a 13-year-old.
Listen, it wasn't us. All right. I got the documents right here. We start doing.
I heard Aldo pulled a Wander Franco. You know that?
No,
he's a baseball player that's going down for pedophilia.
Oh, is he
now.
the Dominican guy?
Yeah.
Listen, all right. They do things differently.
Oh, yeah. Look, Aldo's Mexican, not Dominican. I'm sure he doesn't have any of the same tendencies.
I used to have a joke about that because the writer and director of have you seen the movie the Fifth Element? It's Bruce Willis. It's Mila Jovovich.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it's Chris Tucker. But the director is like this weird French guy, and he makes good films. He has another good film called Leon the Professional, and about an assassin, and it stars a young Natalie Portman. But he's a French guy, and I found out he was a pedophile.
Okay.
Like, he came to America, made films, And then when he's 35, he got a 15-year-old pregnant.
Jesus
a 15-year-old girl
Christ.
in Ohio. He got her pregnant. And I was like, why is he not in jail? Homeboy's still making movies.
Yeah, right. Because it's French.
And I guess because in France, the age of consent is 15.
Oh, what?
So they're like, it's just French culture, bro. All right, we gotta let them fuck kids.
That's fucking
Which is wild, bro.
Oh my God.
You can stab someone on the street. And
they're just like, well, it's not a crime here, so
Exactly.
we're not.
They're like, listen, they like to fuck kids in France. All right, what are we gonna do?
Dude.
Disrespect his culture?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah,
Is that? I wonder. That can't still be a law. I wish I had a producer to Google that for us, but who gives a shit?
This was in Ohio. This was in Ohio, I think. So nobody gives a fuck about that.
yeah, I'm surprised the age of consent isn't 15 in Ohio.
Ohio's just dog shit.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, but yeah, bitterness.
Yeah.
Well, it seeps out of you sometimes, you know, when I'm around you.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that as like a mean thing. I can recognize it. You know how like sociopaths can recognize other sociopaths? Yeah. I think bitter comics can notice aged comics that have been doing it for a slog, and they're like, another year around the sun. Yeah. Time to hit this mic.
Why would I be bitter that comics that have been doing comedy half the time as me are getting 20 times the opportunities? That seems crazy.
And we went to Tucson the other day to go to the open mic.
Yeah, and that was insane.
That was a wild mic.
That was a wild mic. That was a wild night.
It was a wild night.
It was a fucking committing to 4 hours of driving for a 4-minute spot.
4-minute spot.
Yeah, it was fucking not
in a 4-minute spot in front of other comics.
Yeah,
mind you.
It gave me a lot of respect. Shout out Anthony Jenkins. Mm-hmm. He's up here all the time for fucking 3-minute spots at Stir Crazy, dude.
Yeah.
That's fucking...
Yeah, that's good.
That's grinding, dude.
Yeah.
That's putting in the work.
But Stir Crazy, you actually get an audience.
Yeah, that's true.
At laughs, it was literally the whole room was comics. Yeah, there wasn't a single person that didn't sign up.
I think there was 2.
Okay.
But they were old.
2 that were spouses of comics.
Yeah,
that's what it seemed like.
Yeah. Probably.
Because everybody I know that was in the room, I just saw them keep going up.
Dude,
so I was like,
yeah. I think I already told you this, but I want to say it into a microphone. We're outside afterwards, and this comic was leaving and came up to me, looked me in the eyes, and they're like, hey, great set. And they looked at Devin. They're like, hey, have a good night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Devin kept talking about that. Our friend Devin did not have the best set. But he's also new. Devin's been doing it for what, like 9 months or something like that? Or actually a little over a year now.
Year and change.
Yeah, a year and some change now. But still new. Like everyone has their first year different. Like I remember I got to do a don't tell because I'm a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I got to do a couple don't tells. And the first one I ever did, it was at Tempe, and it was great. And there was all these newer comics who were just hanging around.
Yeah.
And one of the comics tried to get a guest spot. And they weren't able to, and they were very bummed about it. And to ease their pain, I was like, listen, I didn't get booked for my first show till a year into comedy.
Right.
I started during the pandemic.
I feel like we're the same person, Chudier. That's my exact story. I didn't get booked on anything. Just dog shit mics in a college town for a year.
Yep.
People here don't understand what that's like, dude.
They don't.
People get booked quick here. Yeah.
It's, and as horrifying, as painful as it was, like I quit comedy a few times that first year. Yeah. It lasted 3 days and I got back to open mics, but it was a rough year because at that time, the pandemic, like everything shut down. Slowly 1 mic came around and then 2 mics, and then it's 2 mics a week for like 2 months until August. Right. But there were shows going on at House of Comedy that Dapper was doing, and a few other comics were doing shows there, and I was not in any one of them. And some of these comics were absolute trash. 90% of them don't do it anymore, too. That's another thing. They all died out. Yeah. And I remember being like, what the fuck? What do I got to do? And I just wasn't getting booked. And I was doing these horrible, horrible open mics. But it got me good because I wrote a new 5 every week because I was doing these short little one-liners. And so it forced me to like get comfortable in silence and bombing.
Yep.
And that was invaluable. And then I also still wrote a ton. So I wasn't doing the same shitty 5. Right. So I got to develop an act. Yep. And I got to actually get good doing all these hundreds of horrible open mics. Right. And so I was actually appreciative after that first year because when I eventually did start getting booked and start going in clubs, I would have great sets. Right.
There's a certain type of comic that like tries to avoid bombing. And they end up so much worse because of it. Yeah. It's like, just go put your time in bombing.
Avoiding bombing is not great. Like, Patrice O'Neal talked about that, where he was like, if I would give advice to other comics, I would be like, try and actually, like, take risks and be okay with bombing.
Don't try to bomb, but be okay with it.
Exactly. Because he was saying too many comics will like, especially in New York, I get it. New York and Boston where he started out, where it's like, I gotta kill. And so every set they were killing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I haven't bombed in 10 years.
Right.
And he's like, they're right. But that's because they didn't try anything new.
Right.
So you're not progressing as a comic.
I heard that's a real issue in LA. Everybody just runs the same tight five.
Runs the same tight five, yeah. And now comedy's going through a weird metamorphosis where it's like, and it's like my joy for comedy, like I love stand up, but my joy has been zapped for like quite a while.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, where I'm just like, am I even funny? What is funny?
Yeah. I don't mention killing myself at every open mic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My joy's been gone. But lately, the past like week and a half, it's come back. So who knows how long that'll last. Yeah. But I actually have an excitement for comedy and what's to come for the future. Well, and I think it was like this hopefulness.
The ups and downs are so weird, huh? Like,
yeah.
It goes.
It's steep and it's low.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason, because like me and two friends got I won't go too deep in this,
sure.
but we got canceled a few years ago for our podcast.
Yeah.
And we were only coming up on 2-year comics. Yeah. We were very new. Well, one of our friends, Chris Herbert, he was like 3 years. So it was me, Chris Herbert, Andrew Oriana. And me and Andrew started around the same time. So we had been doing it for like 2 years. Chris been doing it for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And we were steadily on the momentum up, getting booked on shit, getting a lot of respect from other comics in the scene. And then we got canceled. And then all our shows got dropped. We were told, bookers were told not to book us in clubs, not to even put us in. And it was like a big deal.
Yeah.
And it was so traumatic because in a way, not only did I lose comedy, like the joy of performing outside of open mics, but I lost my 2 best friends because after that we stopped hanging out.
Interesting.
And I still talk to them and we're still really close. Yeah. But we stopped hanging out. I stopped seeing them at open mics as much. Yeah. And it was like, so not only did I lose getting booked outside.
Like opportunities,
exactly,
but your friends.
But I lost my friends. And then also on top of that, a lot of comics I didn't know in the scene and some I did know just hated my guts because of this podcast. Yeah. And some of them probably already hated me. They just wanted a reason. So it's just extra like people that I wasn't familiar with. I was like, you're a piece of shit.
There's always
that. It was a mix of that, losing my friends, and then losing comedy. And it was just like a very depressive time. And then like, we kind of just glossed over it as people. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, it happened, but it was a very traumatic event.
Yeah,
and then people would try and be like, oh, you know, Louis C.K. got canceled, Shane Gillis got canceled, all these Dave Chappelle, and I'm like, these are multi-millionaire headliners.
Yeah, people that already had a fan base.
I'm just coming up in the scene. Yeah. Like I have a day job. You retards. Like this is not the same thing.
Yeah, it's
and.
Not. How long did it take before like the club stopped caring so much? Or
I think it's different for all of us. For Andrew, it wasn't. It was probably like 6 months, like slowly built, and he got enough cachet. He's friends with Bridge Guy, who's a big comic. Tristan Bowling is out in New York now. He's a massive comic, and he was like the Aldo before Aldo left, right? And he had all the Infinity Stones. He was basically could perform House of Comedy, the Big Three. He was hosting pretty much every weekend. He was killing it. So having your boys there who were big in the scene help bring you up, that rose his cachet very quickly.
Of course, yeah.
And then for me, like, it kind of did zap my joy because I was like, yeah, this is kind of dumb. And then I'd get booked sporadically in shitty backyard shows or somebody's garage.
Right.
And then I'd have a good set back.
And it's like, you're just trying to be funny. It's like,
you're just trying to improve. But my joy definitely has started to come back like the past week in a new way where I'm like hopeful. Like, you know, when you start comedy and you know, you're new and you're like, wow, a booked show? I'm so excited. Yeah. And then you go and it's a dingy bar and there's like a fucking pregnant mother smoking cigarettes in the front.
It's worse than the mics.
Yeah, it's way worse than the mics. And the comics, and then the list is horrible and you're all just bombing in front of people who want to watch the game. You know, but you're still hopeful for every new show. Like that's come back surprisingly now after 4 years. And it's like, and it's weird because it's like, I feel like now, because comedy's so popular, there's so many people doing it. Yeah. And it's accelerated so fast. Like we have more new comics now than ever, especially in our scene. And it's so weird because we have a lot of new comics that are progressing and I feel like a little too fast, but I'm not going to stifle them or stop them or anything. But I would not want to be like 4 or 5 months in and already be like trying to get in the clubs.
No, you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You're not ready. Like it's so fascinating to me here that there's so much, the culture is you should put out clips and try to perform in clubs so much. It's like,
and that is
I'm
the right sentiment.
so grateful that I didn't even have the opportunity to do that for a couple years, so that I was good enough. Like, who knows if you're ever good enough, but like, people should be more cautious about what they put out there and the sets they do at clubs. Like, it's so crazy to me to go to Stir Crazy every fucking week and watch how many people run the light at the. It's like, do you not realize where you are? Like,
basic.
Everybody who matters here notices that and just is like, oh, this person's unprofessional and doesn't know what they're doing. Have you ever seen a comic
run the light and then like they get the light again and they're like, oh, 5 minutes already. I wanted more time. Like, go to really a mic, motherfucker. You'll get all the time you want. Like, you can go to 15 of them in a week. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. We all want as much club time as we can get. Shut the fuck up.
Exactly. There's 52 weekends in a year, bitch. You won't get booked for any of them if you keep doing this.
I was at Stir Crazy the other day. This comic's running the light. And he goes, no, don't play me off. It's like, well, what are we doing? Like,
at that point,
so you know what you're doing.
Play him off.
Yeah, it's like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, you absolutely know what you're doing. And maybe it's because like comedy is like I think people like saying they're a comedian now. It's like a fun. It's a fun. Oh yeah, on that point where you're talking about like doing well. Yeah, I call it doing well in obscurity. You know, where it's like. And there's
like Celia.
And there's two spectrums. Celia is a great example.
Because for years, just killing in bar shows where nobody cared.
Yeah,
and then
for like
all of a
7
sudden
years.
she just blows up.
And
on
now
Kill
her
Tony.
career is amazing. Yeah, they call that what, like killing in obscurity. Like what's his name talked about that? Bill Burr talked about that because he was a headliner 20 years in the comedy and would murder in like Idaho, and then afterwards someone in the audience would be like, "Wow, you were amazing. What are you doing here?" And he'd be like, I don't know. I have nowhere else to be. I haven't popped yet. Like that's what it is. And it's like, I remember Dimitri Martin said this, and so did Nick Thune said this. And I love those guys because I like the Jokey Joke guys, and they're both like great one-liner comics. But they both said anonymity is power. Yeah. And like being able to do well when no one knows who you are, it's like a skill set, and you get to build up. Like Nick Thune talked about coming up in LA, and for like a solid year, like year and a half, he's a few years into it, he's like, I'm just gonna get up as much stage time as possible, but I'm gonna make sure I don't get in front of any agents or anybody that could see me. Yeah, because I just want to get good anonymously. And then eventually he was like, I felt like I was ready. I had so much stage time, I had so much material I'd written. It was like, now I'm ready. And then he performed in front of like bookers or agents or whatnot, showcases, and then he killed, and then he got all his shit. Right. And it's like, that is important.
There's this, I had this realization. I was at a comedy festival watching a good friend of mine get a really good have a really fun show, and all my shows on this festival were horrible. Yeah. But it brought me to the realization that every opportunity you don't get is an opportunity you'll be more ready for when you do get it.
100%.
Right. Yeah. So like that's the balance, is like when you do get whatever's coming to you, you'll be that much better.
It's like that Jocko Willink video, the former Navy SEAL is a podcast. Yeah. He has a video titled "Good," where he's like, whenever something bad happens, you say "good." You know, like more time,
it is. You know? Yeah.
Like, and I think about that sometimes. Like, if I don't get an opportunity, or maybe I do get an opportunity to showcase in front of a big booker or a big club owner, and I smash it, and then nothing happens from it, I'm like, well, good. Like, you have more time to write more jokes. You have more time to improve your stage presence. You have more time to improve your delivery. Yeah. And all that helps you out at the end.
It helps. You know? It's
because you're here for the long haul. I remember listening to a comic say that. This comic, I think his name was Dave Temple. He's talking about how comedy is a lifelong game. So why are you in such a rush? You have a lifetime. It's like a marathon. You have a lifetime.
How many comics have really popped before 10 years? You know?
Yeah.
How many?
I mean, in our scene, all of them. But
yeah. Well, popping in Phoenix doesn't matter. Yeah. Devin likes to say something. He says Phoenix is an open mic, and it's so true.
The whole scene? Yeah.
The whole scene is an open mic. This is just a mic, dude. Yeah. Like none of this matters. We're just trying to get good at comedy.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. That's the way I see it too. Phoenix is like, it's like a practice ground. Yeah, it's like it's not the league. You're not in the NFL yet. No, this is like a high school varsity football. Yeah, and you're hoping to get signed by a big Division I school.
I mean, don't get me wrong. All the clubs matter, and you want to have good relationships with them, so that if you God willing, got to the point where you could like tour, then you could always come back here. you know.
Yeah, and that happens. Like that happened to Luis Alvarez, who's like one of the best comics.
Is he touring now?
But
hell yeah.
No, but a few years ago, he used to host like one of the big three.
Sure.
And he hosted for Brian Callen. And then
I mean, he still hosts at the big three.
Yeah, he does. but he hosted
quite a bit.
He hosted for Brian Callen, and then like a year later, Callen came back and he hosted for him again. And then Callen loved him so much, he's like, I want you to come on the road with me. And then he featured for him for like years.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge deal. That was like a huge win for the Phoenix comedy scene. Because like the rest of us were just toiling away at shitty open mics and like hookah bars, like doing open mics. And like that was like a huge win, you know. And then Aldo, you know, I mean,
Aldo's a big win.
Baby boy Aldo, him getting just for laughs.
Just
and
for
like,
faces.
and now he like goes on the road. So it's like, all that is like a huge win for the Phoenix scene. And also Celia as well. Like Celia.
Yeah, Celia.
Getting all
Tristan
the success
moving to New York is huge.
Yep. All that.
Because he's, I mean, I heard he's passed at the Stand, right?
That's what I heard. I think so. Yeah.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard. I'm pretty sure.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
And with him, it's like, and I think all these comics too, if you utilize the Phoenix scene right, and if you get the opportunity, I feel like that is the hardest part about comedy.
Yeah.
Which my biggest gripe is, as much as I love comedy, and the Phoenix scene is so valuable to all of us, it's the lack of like opportunity and or the lack of like really follow through by like some of the bookers. It's just like
I hear you.
It's almost like a money game. It's like, can we fill seats? Can we do these shows? And I get it. Do as many shows as possible. But it's like there's no I feel like there should be a system to grow the scene. You know what I mean? Like some type of system where it's like, I feel like a 1-year comic and an 8-year comic should not be vying for the same hosting. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I don't care how good that 1-year comic is. Yeah. There's so much they still have to learn and get to.
Mean,
and they probably don't even have 10 minutes.
That's why we're bitter, Chudier.
Exactly.
Like, for sure, there could be like more attention paid to what's fair and who's working hard. It's like you and I both know there's a lot of comics that are working their ass off that don't really get the spots.
Yeah. They're sitting at this table. Yeah, like when you were talking about at Bullshooters, when you were like, "Oh, can I just get in the clubs again?"
You're like,
and then I told you, I followed you. You were gone, but I followed you, and I was like, "At least you got in." The rest of us are still trying. And the other comics were like loving it because they're like, "Yeah, that's our story too." Like, you're a part of a small group of comics that has actually worked a weekend at one of the major clubs in the scene, you know, which is a great thing, you know. And then that's the thing; it never stops. Once you work that weekend, you're like, "Well, can I work more?
Right?
What can I feature?" And then eventually headline. It's like it's all those steps, you know. But getting in is like the hardest part.
Yeah, for sure.
And the lack of like, I'm
a little disappointed that it didn't translate to any of the other clubs. I thought maybe it would. Yeah, but I
mean, even Aldo isn't that stir crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Dude, Aldo one time he was like expressing jealousy that I got booked at Stir Crazy. I had to be like, "Hey man, settle down." Like you get a lot of great opportunities. You've gotten like 30 opportunities this year that if I'd gotten just one of them, it would have made my year. Like I would have been like, this was a great year for me.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
If I just got to host for Ari.
Yeah.
Or if I just
100%.
got to host for Jeff Asmus.
Yeah. Or Kyle Kinane.
Right. Or just got to host for Kyle Kinane.
Like one of my all-time favorites. Yeah. I would have died happy. I wouldn't need another gig for the rest of the year.
Kyle lives up in Oregon.
Yeah.
And one time I was working the door at a show, Sean Patton show.
Oh,
and Kyle walks in, and he looks like every motherfucking dude in Oregon, dude. I'm like, what's up, bro? You got a ticket?
The beard,
yeah. So I'm like, what's up, bro? You got a ticket? He's like, I need to go talk to the booker. Yeah. And I was like, okay, dude. Like, and then as he walks by, I'm like, oh, word, that's Kyle Kinane. Like, I recognize him now. He probably does need to go talk to the booker. I bet he's doing a guest spot tonight.
Oh, did you hear that story that happened to not Louis, to Bill Burr?
Yeah,
he was doing Madison Square Garden, and he wanted to do a tune-up set before, and so he went to LOL Comedy Club, and he was like, I want to see if I could just do like a quick set.
Yeah,
and then the booker was like, can you send us a video? Like, how many people can you bring to a show? And he's like, no, I just want to do like a quick set tonight. And she's like, I can't put you on. And he's like, I'm doing Madison Square Garden. I'm Bill Burr. Yeah. And she's like, I don't know who you are, but I don't care. You're not getting up. And he's like, are you kidding me?
That's
and then he went to like the
shit.
cellar and like just talked shit about it.
That's so
And it was like a huge story. And the comics who worked there, I guess, didn't know about it until after it happened. They're like, You turned away Bill Burr? Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? That's insane.
It sounds like a drunk power crazy lady, dude.
But also, some bookers literally don't know anything about comedy. Like,
Right.
it seemed like this person working there just didn't know who Bill Burr was.
Yeah.
Which not everyone's going to know.
That's like unacceptable, though. Like,
I agree.
you know?
If you work at a comic club, it should be like, here are the 10 biggest comics on the planet right now.
It's like
The ones that people emulate. Like, you see people emulate comics, you know? And it's like Bill Burr's one of those comics.
It's like at most comedy clubs, the fucking dishwasher knows who Bill Burr is.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. You even knew who Bearded Kyle
it's
Kinane
kind of
is.
crazy, like when you talk to employees at comedy clubs and you realize these people just love comedy so much. That's like basically why they have this job most of the time. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
and not always even just to do it, though. That's a good move for a lot of people. They just like being around it.
Yeah, like House of Comedy. We were there yesterday,
Yeah.
and the staff are always comedy club staffs are always super cool. They're always really chill because they have to deal with like weird people and weird headliners and features and like openers, and
They're
so-
cool if you're cool. Yeah.
Exactly, and they'll definitely give it out. And also, comedy's just chaotic, and they also get to see good comedy shows. Like that's another thing. Like a lot of the staff members, when I talk to them, and they'll be like, "Oh, dude, this comic came on. He was amazing." Like they have the same joy that we do when we see a great comic or we see like a really good joke. You know, like I got to see Kyle Kinane in a Flagstaff.
Sick.
Like after like during the pandemic, it was like a year in. And it was like his first show, and a local comic by the name of Eric Buys did the whole show. He booked it, and it was at this place called Flagstaff Brewing Company, which is basically like a brewery, but like a bar brewery, but it had a side room where they would have an open mic. It was like Bullshooters. They had a side room there with the open mic, but the side room was perfect. It was much smaller than Bullshooters. It was very tight, like low ceilings, well lit, and he did like an hour 20 there, and it was incredible.
Yeah, he always does long sets. He's a beast.
And it was funny because he was like, "Oh, I'm a little rusty. I haven't done stand-up in like long.
He always does
I haven't done
that,
stand-up in
dude.
like 4 months." Murders, looks down his notes one time, was so funny.
Yeah.
And he was the first guy I saw where I was like, I was a huge fan of him before, but I was like, oh, that's a world-class comic. Because up until that point, I just saw my shitty open mic friends.
I didn't
who
know
were
you
like,
loved Kyle
abortion.
like this. He was at the comedy festival I went to last October, and
Yeah, I'm like a comedy nerd. That's
Yeah,
why. Like, I grew
for
up
sure
watching a lot of comedy.
I mean, he's the man. And like he's like so much he's just around in the Pacific Northwest. So everybody knows and loves him up here.
Exactly.
But down here, it's like you might say like, "Hey, you know who Kyle Kinane is?" And people are like, "No."
Yeah, no idea.
I have no idea. Yeah, it's just comedy's huge like that. But anyways, I was at this fest. You're gonna love this story, dude. I'm eating a sandwich and Kyle walks in and he's like, "Damn, dude, that looks fucking good. Like, where'd you get that?" I was like, "It's at this deli, like just down the street." And he's like, "Okay." Like he's looking it up on his phone and he's like, "Motherfucker, like they close at 5:30. Like, what kind of bullshit?" Like,
Yeah.
And I just go like, "Hey man, I could just run over there for you. It's no problem. I'd be happy to." And he like looks at me for a second. He's like, "Nah, man, I can't have you do that." I was like, "How? Like, I can go get you a sandwich. Like, you don't need to be this humble."
Yeah,
but like,
it's no issue.
like I just felt like any other comic would have been like, "Yeah, sure, go get me a sandwich, you little bitch." Like, and he just wasn't. Even though I offered, was like, "No, I won't do that to you." Like,
Yeah. And that's that's a testament
he's
to
humble,
how
like
cool he is.
yeah, and just that he keeps
Yeah, because some comics will get like big, and they'll get big heads even in our scene. Like I remember one time this comic, I was bombing. It was at a horrible open mic.
Yeah.
I was bombing.
Yeah.
Right? It was at Josh Harrison's open mic. That's what it was. And it was open mic outdoors at a pizza shop. The only people that would go there were other comics. And so it was just my friends. It was like Andrew, I think it was maybe Aldo, it was Josh, and whoever. And I was going like last.
yeah,
And I was going up and I was bombing horribly, of course, because there's nobody here.
sure.
And I was like, God, my comedy career sucks. This is the way it's going to be. And I go, I'm going to be here in 14 years. Right? Which it wasn't a dig at anybody, but there was a comic there who'd been doing it for 14 years.
Yeah.
And they all looked at him and go, "Oh, he's talking shit about you." And I go, "What?" And then he goes, "Well, at least I've been on TV." And I'm like, all right, you were an extra on Law and Order. Who gives a shit? And I was like, we're in Phoenix. We're the shittiest scene in like this isn't a scene to brag about. We're all open micers. We have daytime jobs. And then I found out he actually was an extra on Law and Order. That's what he was talking about.
What?
And that's just shot in the dark. I was like, what's the worst?
Like, it's a pretty good guess.
I was like, what's the worst thing I can think of that you shouldn't give a shit about? Being an extra on Law and Order, SVU, being coffee shop customer number 9. You know,
that's so funny, dude.
But I remember like seeing that, and a few other comics have like big britches. I'm like, bro, we all have day jobs. We're driving to the same mic.
Right.
There should be no ego of like, I'm kind of a big deal here. It's that big fish in a small pond mentality.
It totally, yeah, exactly. And I mean, Phoenix isn't even that small a pond, but it's
the comedy scene.
It's kind of just more that it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's not small by numbers. It just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's like, if you're not touring and selling tickets, fuck you. Like, it's just an open micer.
You're just open mic, and it's like our scene. We're the 5th largest scene in America, but we're not the 5th largest scene.
Yeah.
So it just shows like how it's not a developed scene.
That's an interesting point. I've never thought about
that.
That. Also, it like sucks
if you look at all the
here.
cities that are around our size, it's like Chicago, LA, New York. It's like they all have more developed scenes. Even Denver has more developed scenes.
I feel like probably a lot of people start comedy here and then quit. And if they had started somewhere else, they would have kept going.
Yeah. we also have tough audiences too. Like I've noticed that too. Like sometimes a headliner will come through, or just like a comic who's just stopping by.
For sure, they'll do one of our
mics.
Be weird sometimes. Oh
no, not even the clubs. The mics.
The
clubs,
mics
I feel like
can
are
always
great.
Be weird.
Yes, but they'll even say, like exceptionally, that we have harder mics.
Interesting.
Which I do get somewhere because the audience is. I feel like Phoenix is such a party town. It's like similar to Vegas, but not as.
It's like hard to get their attention.
So it's hard to get their attention, exactly. And so it's like maybe some other scenes you inherently have their attention from the get go.
Sure.
You know?
But yeah.
But
that was such an interesting point because, like, I've heard people say that about like the Pacific Northwest, like so much because like they're so like uptight about like, oh, you can't make fun of that and this. They're like, it's hard to like, but like it's interesting that it's not like that here, but people still feel like the crowds are hard. You know?
Yeah, I feel like the club crowds for the most part. I mean,
they're great for the most part. They can just be a little old sometimes. Like every now and then you'll catch a club at like, all right. You catch a show at House of Comedy. That's all senior citizen.
I go to House
or
of
Stir
Comedy.
Crazy. When I hosted that weekend there, at least like I remember like my Hunter Biden bit bombing, and I'd be like, man, you guys are so like uptight. You can't handle like guns and cocaine or cool. Like, that's like that bit normally always works. Like that's it's like kind of when a crowd is too conservative for the Hunter Biden is awesome bit. It's like, wow, you guys are pretty uptight.
Yeah, it's definitely an age thing. Like as soon as people get to like their 50s, because I've noticed that was House of Comedy too, where it's like I've been to a lot of weekends. I've watched a ton of headliners, a ton of features, a ton of openers, and I remember one guy who's from LA. He brought his own feature and opener, and they were both they both had sex jokes, but one was like a mom. And so she didn't have that much sex jokes. It was like about her husband and like her baby boy.
Like
so it was like sweet. But then the feature, she had a ton of sex jokes and they were fantastic.
But the crowd hated them.
They were like just dirty and like they were just, the crowd was very old.
Yeah.
And they were just stone faced. Like, okay, we don't want to hear about how you want to fuck your landlord. Like, can you tell a joke that's not about getting your pussy wet right now? And she didn't. And she bombed for 20 minutes.
Damn.
But I was like, she's not a bad comic.
Right.
But her act, it's skewed so that if you're a little more uptight, you're not going to fuck with it. Especially if you're older. If you're like, imagine doing that to your grandparents. Like, yeah, they'd be like horrified.
Yeah.
They'd be like, okay, lady, all right, you got your back blown out.
Right.
Can you talk about prune juice or something? I don't know.
Yeah, a great comic can like sense that and adjust, you know, probably make fun of themselves a little bit for like being like, whoa, that was a little crazy for you guys. And then like, but like a lot of people don't know how to adjust during a set.
And adjusting is hard too if you don't have any other types of material.
That's true.
That's why it's good to write different types of jokes.
Got to. That's why you got to do all the different types of rooms.
Exactly.
That's why I'll do Better, I'll do Tempe Tavern, where literally the exact opposite jokes work.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's like you almost have to be racist or sexist or homophobic at Tempe Tavern, and just like not.
And Tavern has like regulars, and it is funny because like the regulars are actually pretty nice, and I've been going there for years. And I remember there's one regular, I don't know what his name is, but he always goes like, I love your stuff. I love watching your comedy. It's very funny. And I remember one time it was just pretty much just comics besides 2 people.
Yeah.
And I was trying out a bunch of new shit, and it was all bombing.
Yeah.
And the regular who said I love your stuff, he heard my voice, so he came over to see what I was gonna do material. Yeah. And I was bombing so bad, I was like, hey, I'm gonna suck one of you guys. And then Devin's like, you can suck mine. So I go, and you can suck mine later too, buddy. and we just went on this homoerotic tan.
Nice.
And I saw the guy just face change and just walk away. And I felt so bummed. I was like, I lost my only fan by bombing and talking about sucking dick.
I was just kidding. Stop.
Yeah. I was like, please come back. I'm actually not gay. Please. He's my friend. I know Devin.
Yeah, these are just jokes.
Yeah. But those mics are fucking.
Oh man, they can be fun. They can be fucking make you want to commit suicide.
They can be fun along with like the friends, and I feel like also with me, like my struggle too is it's like I'm at a level where I should be at least in the clubs, breaching in the clubs. You know, I'm at that proficiency where I could do it for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And all my friends have surpassed me in their careers. Like all my best friends are the biggest comics in the scene. And it's weird to see them go from same shitty open micer level to I'm doing another weekend.
Right.
I'm going to go do a show in New York real quick. So have fun at Tavern, bitch. You know? I'm like, I will. You know? And then
you guys have fun too.
Yeah. You guys enjoy yourself. Tell me how great the stand was. Tell me how Shane Gillis said you were really funny. I remember we used to do JPs together, but clearly you've forgotten doing those late night open mics in front of nobody. You know? And so that's a weird thing for me. It's like to be the only one who's like still here. And like fortunate for me, I always say I try and look at the bright side. It's like fortunate for me, I'm still taking comedy seriously. And my skill set is still there. Because I was like, if I took a couple of years off and I came back and everyone's blown up, and I'm like, well, why aren't I there? Well, we know why, motherfucker.
Right.
But if I've been putting in the work, then it's like, okay, it sucks, but you're still good. Right. If an opportunity shows up, you could execute. Yeah. So just keep on at it.
It's good to remind yourself what you get out of comedy too. Like you have a community of people that you can relate to and are friends with. Yeah. You know, like one of my favorite parts of doing comedy is watching people who have never been part of a community before find comedy and people who accept them and be like, what the hell is this? Like, I think maybe this could work for me. Like having friends.
Yeah.
And
so somebody once said like, open mic scenes are like in Toy Story, the island of misfit toys. Yeah, just all these misfit people that are coming together, and they're like, "Wow, a place where I can call home, where I can say a rape joke, and nobody looks at me funny." You know, talking to you, mom. You know, there's that whole thing where it's like nothing, and that's what first thing I realized when I started doing comedy because I went back to Minnesota. All my friends from high school, they're all great. They're all married with kids now, but you can't even make like sort of edgy jokes with them because the moment I did it, they were like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I was like, "This would have killed at an open mic." and then I came back to Phoenix. And I told all my comedy friends the jokes I made out there, and they're like, "Those are hilarious." I'm like, "I know, right? Real people get me." All right,
yeah, that's right.
It's like
real comics,
yeah. But it's like, our sense of humor will be skewed, and it's like with comedy, you can talk about anything.
Exactly.
You know?
So
including
that's
white
what
comics saying the N-word.
It's like. I can't see myself. Part of the reason I was even willing to invest the money into this camera and this mixer and this laptop and everything that makes this podcast happen is it's like, I know I like doing this. Like, I don't really care if this never turns into a living. I like talking to other comics about comedy. Okay. I like, being part of a scene.
And you get to meet more people in the scene.
Right.
Yeah. Doing a podcast is great. I used to have one.
And I'm just saying comedy in general. It's like I don't see myself stopping because I enjoy it. So it's like that's why I was willing to spend the money.
It's my favorite thing to do in the world is perform comedy more than anything else. Someone said like, "Oh, you could play video games or you could go skiing." You know,
it's weird
I've done
how
those. They're cool, but
little
they're
those
like
things matter now. It's like especially after doing comedy, it's so hard to care about other stuff. Like, it's like pretty much like I just want to like do comedy or watch basketball. That's it, dude. it.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I feel you. Doing comedy, is so
like
good.
trying to imagine like getting better at a video game. It's like I'll put my mind to use on comedy. Either I'm relaxing, not thinking about shit, watching basketball, or I'm thinking about comedy,
or you're thinking about the comedy
and like
performing.
it's so fun getting that feeling before you get on stage and your heart starts beating a little faster and you're so awake.
Yeah.
Like I fall asleep at home when I stay home on nights I don't have sets.
Yeah.
Just in the evening at like 7 p.m. when my body never gets like a jolt from adrenaline, I just get tired and fucking pass out at like 8:30 p.m. and wake up at like 1 in the morning pissed off.
Your body's so used to that routine.
Yeah.
And it's like, killing is like amazing. It's
such a crazy feeling.
When you kill for like a hot room, that's another thing about comedy is like if you go a long time without getting booked on anything, you're only doing horrible open mics. So you're like, I think I'm bad at comedy.
Yeah.
You know, and even you're trying out new jokes.
The best room you've done.
Yeah, and that's the thing about pretty much all mics is like a lot of the times the best you'll get is like a chuckle or a smirk, like that from the audience, and you're like, oh, that's amazing. You know, that wasn't what I was looking for.
This will probably crush at the club.
And when you do like a hot room at a club or just like a good show, like when I did Don't Tell, I killed so hard both shows that I was like, oh, I am. And then even like some of the comics are coming from out of town that were doing Don't Tell.
Yeah.
Were watching my set and really enjoying it. And I was like, oh yeah, I am good at comedy. But I would go so long, sometimes months without getting booked on anything.
Sure.
That in my head, I'm like, I'm just horrible at comedy.
Yeah.
I just bombed at Devils for the 5th week in a row. Somebody booed me.
Devils.
This is not good.
Devils.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say it this way. I've done Devils twice and was like, I'm cool now.
You only did it twice?
Twice. Just, it's a bucket. It's outside. Yeah. Like,
it's late. It starts at 9.
It's crazy standing there watching everybody talk to themselves while you're just like talking into the void and watching your voice float into nothingness.
Float into the ether and then watching people drive by with their cars and their motorcycles.
I started bullying Seth so much.
Yeah.
The first time I was there, I was like, "Hey, Baldy, what's your name?" He's like, "Seth." I was like, "Seth, that's pretty soft name. You a soft guy?" He's like, "I guess. What's happening right now?" Seth's like the nicest, best person.
Seth is one of my best friends too, and he got bullied so much. I remember when he started comedy, like 2021.
Yeah.
It was right of January, like around the insurrection, I think.
Yeah.
And so everybody was like, oh, we got a racist white guy here. He's bald. He's a skinhead. Every joke for like the first couple weeks. And he's like, and he took it. And then they just kept doing it. We're like, and I'd be like, yo, that shit's hacky now, bro. We all get it. Yeah. And when he started, there was like 4 bald white guys.
Sure.
Who were bald and short, just like him at the open
now
mics.
there's like 8.
Well, now a lot of them stopped doing comedy. Or
all the really bald guys.
Or they moved, yeah. And so that was a big part of it. It's like picking on people. Yeah, the roasting like Josh Harrison.
Yeah, that's all he does. You're gonna get it if you're in the room when Josh Harrison's there. Yeah. He's gonna make a joke and then laugh about it at you.
He's gonna have a dad laugh about it. Yeah. But yeah, that's a big part. Like killing, like it makes you want to do more comedy, and it motivates you. Like when you got a guest at House of Comedy, like a few. I think
a couple months ago.
I think I was there. Maybe I left before. Maybe it was a different day. I got a guest at, but I remember like hearing like you did well from everybody, and I was like, that probably felt great. Yeah, because you got to perform in front of a paid audience that paid to see comedy. Yep. It's actually a solid.
I literally wrote on my Instagram, it beats bombing in another empty bar again.
Oh, 100%. Are you kidding me?
Like what I wrote. It's like, it's good to be at House of Comedy tonight.
Bombing there
sure beats bombing in another.
Oh, 1,000%. It beats bombing at any open mic. Yeah. And it's like, and it feels great too, because it's like, because they paid to see comedy. So it's like when you try out jokes with them, it's like, these are real people. These aren't jaded comics. Right. Who have been doing it for 10 years and are bitter that all these new comics are getting opportunities.
It's crazy. Mark Norman talks about that a lot, how it's comedy's harder at first and then it's easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you get to like that next level, because like you graduate from doing open mics to mainly paid audiences. And at some point, your audience, like, it's as easy as it's gonna get. It's people 100%. Literally like you already.
Yeah, and you work so hard just to get to that level. Like Stavros and Sam Morrell are good friends. They used to have a podcast called Pod Don't Lie.
I used to listen. Yeah,
the basketball podcast. And I remember, like, I think a year or two ago, Stavros was talking about like how, you know, like when you're doing like a show and it's just like the comedy isn't going well, and you're on a show and all these comics are like getting all this shit, and one of the comics on the lineup is just a dog shit comic, and you're just like, let me just bury this motherfucker real quick. Let me just show them what real comedy is, you know? Yeah. But it really is like, it's great hearing those moments because they all went through it too, where it's like they get overlooked, you know? And Sam was talking about how like you almost want to be like, when you get an opportunity, you always want to be like, yeah, it's about time.
Yeah,
because he's like, we all got it, a lot of things super late that we should have gotten, you know, this Comedy Central thing, this late night set, you know.
I mean, comedy kind of is just like an exercise in persistence.
Yeah.
It's like, who can keep going the longest?
And also, another joy is watching people bomb. That is one of the biggest joys of comedy that you will not know until you get in. Even watching, like, there's a few comics that I think are dog shit that aren't even in our scene. They're in other scenes. Sure. And I know they're dog shit because they have, you know, because they're horrible. But I'll see their,
they are.
But I'll see their Comedy Central 10-minute set or their late night. And I remember there's one comic, she's awful. She's almost like you know those comics who like their whole thing is like being quirky and cute. That's it. That's her whole act. And like people laugh because they're quirky and cute or like fucking from Ethiopia or some bullshit. And so this is one of those comics. And I watched one of her late night sets. It was at a late night with Seth Meyers, I believe it was. And she bombed for 6 minutes straight. And when I say I was just jerking it, like, oh, look at that. And it was hilarious watching her face because it's a close-up of her face. And after every punchline, nothing. And you can see her go, so anyways, and I was just like, yes. Oh, you weren't expecting this, weren't you? Your jokes are trash. That's why they're not laughing. At a late night show.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. Though also those late night crowds are like, who is that? Like, that could be a bunch of old people.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And I heard it's all different too. Like some of those late night crowds, like maybe like Stephen Colbert, they do it in like a separate room when the show isn't even taping. Like they'll do it on like a Saturday afternoon or something. I mean, and they'll just have 8 comics going and do
what would be best for comedy is if they just like taped a set at a club and then like put that up.
Yeah,
like.
Jimmy Kimmel has a comedy club. I heard they do it now there at the club.
Just like kind of make the background look similar or whatever, but like just perform to a club.
That's way better. Yeah. And also, late night sets don't do anything for you. Like I remember when I started, a comic who'd been doing it for a long time. He was like, because I was like, there's a whole clip thing. Obviously, that was popping off when I started. When Andrew Schultz, you know, became a comic who couldn't sell tickets to filling up clubs, so now he's doing arenas. Yeah, you know, and so all these comics are like, oh, let's post our specials and clips, you know, so people can see we're funny and then go buy tickets.
Right.
And I remember comics started talking about like, oh, me, I should post clips, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. I'm 8 months into comedy. I'm not good enough to fucking post clips. It's going to be really bad. And I also don't want
the culture here pressures you so much.
Yeah. And they all did. And I was like, I just want to get good. And then eventually I can post clips. But it's like, I got to get good first.
Yeah.
I'm focused on getting better.
Yeah.
And one of the comics, he was like, oh no, you need to do a late night set. That's important. It's for your resume, all this bullshit. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. He's like, no, you have to. I was like, you're part of the old guard, bro. Yeah. You don't have to. I was like, this shitty TikTok comic just blew up last week.
Yeah, and
they were an open micer, and now they're filling clubs across the country.
And they're never doing the Tonight Show.
They've never done it. No one's heard of them outside of the comedy world. But this comic, I remember there was a comic from LA during the pandemic. A lot of LA comics would come here because they were closed down. Yeah. And I remember some of them had crazy credits like Comedy Central, HBO, and you could look at their sets. They would come here, they'd bomb, they'd eat shit, and they couldn't even headline or feature clubs. So I was like, what's the point of those credits then if they don't get you anything? Yeah. They're just fancy. Mm-hmm. It was just fancy to say, oh, I have an Amazon Prime special. And now OnlyFans is doing...
Shout out Adam Dominguez.
Shout out. I don't know who that is.
You don't know Adam?
No.
Right. Really? That's weird to me. He's a Las Vegas comic. that comes down here quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
he's a great dude, and he has a special on OnlyFans.
He hosted. No, he went to Josh's roasting.
Nice, yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. But he's close with a lot of the upper echelon of the Phoenix scene.
Yeah, he was probably here a while.
He was. I think he used to date a woman here, so he's here a lot. Yeah.
And it's close. It's 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
But OnlyFans TV is now doing 10-minute specials because all these other places.
Interesting.
Because all these other like Comedy Central and like Premium Blend, they used to have these 10-minute specials where you could see a rising Jim Gaffigan, who was maybe 4 or 5 years in or 6 years in and hadn't popped yet, but you could see that set and they would have something. Yeah. And we don't have that anymore. I mean, features don't get paid anything, hosts don't get paid anything to live off of like they did back then. And so now OnlyFans is trying to like join the comedy thing and and they're giving out a lot of opportunities. They have this thing called OFTV, and they have, I think it's called LOL. They have all these like little specials where they basically have open micers. Do 10 minutes. And I've been watching a lot of them, and they're horrible, but I'll still watch them just to see who's out there. And I'm just a fan of comedy, so I'll watch it.
Nice. Recently,
a lot of it is not great, but but like the nice thing is like it's providing more opportunity.
Right.
And it's like they'll have something that they can show people.
Exactly.
Like, I have this 10 minutes.
It's good there's comedy out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want. Like, and that's a weird thing about comedy now because we're at the part where it's so popular now. It was not this popular.
I know, it's interesting.
And so now everyone does comedy. I mean, actors, models, school teachers, moms, grandmas, granddads.
Future mass shooters.
We got a couple in this scene.
Andy Chung.
Good thing Andy Chung isn't like a Mike Dapper where he can change your career. Because if you said that and it was about Mike Dapper, it'd be like, all right, let's not book Eric anymore.
He went up at Wayward one time and he just opened with like, everybody needs to die. What the fuck is happening, man?
I remember that.
And it murdered. He had one of his best sets ever, dude. It was so good. I was like, you should be violent more.
Yeah, you should be honest. Just be a psycho on stage. It works out. It's just like the comic we saw at Laughs. The comic on the best set was this weird autistic kid who closed his eyes and looked down when he told his punchlines. You could tell he was probably a year or less, but he had perfect jokes, no fat, and they were fantastic. And just boom, 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 one after the other. And he rode with the energy, you know?
Yeah.
And he fucking murdered.
Yeah.
So it's like, but he was authentic. You could tell he was nervous. You could tell he was this weird guy who couldn't get any pussy like he was talking about.
Yeah.
And it's like, the crowd can sense that, you know. Some comics, they go up and they try and do a personality. They try to act like their favorite or what people think they should act like.
Yeah, it's
and it fucking falls.
But
apart.
we're all it's annoying, but also we're all figuring out. And I did that a lot when I was early into comedy too. So I'm not hating. Just there's a lot of that where you're like,
we're not hating on all, but we're just saying like, being yourself is important.
It's like an important part of doing comedy is learning who you are and what matters to you and how to get that across to the crowd while making them laugh.
Yeah.
It's like
100%.
I like a big sometimes like I think Mark Norman's funny on podcasts, but like a kind of a critique of his comedy is every time I watch him do a set, I'm like, who are you? Why is every joke out?
Yeah, every joke is
it's just about this or that. Like
yeah, it's not about them because I feel like
I've heard some people say they love that and they only want just jokes. But it's like I want to know about you a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like it depends on the comic and like what they want out of it.
Right. Of course.
Because and I agree with it to some standpoint where it's like some comics they don't find anything funny about their lives.
Yeah.
So they're observational. They're like, oh, this happened in the news.
It's like everything is funny.
Yeah,
everything. That's I think you have to believe that as a comic. It's like
100%. Everything.
Any situation should happen, and you should be like, "That's funny." Like,
yeah, but not everybody sees that because
it's hard. Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, because I noticed that when I started because like I tell a ton of jokes about my life.
Yeah,
and it's like one thing about it is like I always say is like when people say, "Oh, you should get more personal. You should talk about this more," and I'm always like, I'm letting you into my mind.
Right.
I'm telling you how I feel about kids.
Yeah.
I'm telling you how poor I am.
Straight up.
I'm telling you about my student loans. I'm telling you about my family, my background, or my mom, how she raised me. Yeah. And it's like, maybe it's not about me directly, but it's all people that are connected to me or exactly how I feel about something or something I went through.
Right.
and then just as a punchline at the end, so that you maybe forget about what I told you.
Right, like, it's this weird exchange where it's like, will you listen to me talk about myself if I promise to make you laugh?
Yeah, and I feel like some of that comes with just comedy, like the attention span. Because like I remember when I started, like my favorite comics are one-line comics. It's like Anthony Jeselnik or like Dimitri Martin and like, and one thing about that is like part of the reason I even stuck with doing a lot of short form material. It's because like I started around doing comedy with crowds that didn't have my attention and they didn't want it. And so instead of like one thing comics would do here is they would say something crazy to get their attention. They'd be like, "Oh, baby rape," and people are like, "Huh?" And they turn over, and then there was no substance.
Right.
But I noticed that it's like if you told a good joke, you had their attention for a little longer.
Absolutely.
And even if it was short.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I didn't earn their attention. Like, again, it was during the pandemic, so a lot of people weren't coming out, and the people that were coming out, they were out to have a good time. They were out to listen to me try out jokes as a new comic.
Yeah.
But if I hit something that was great, then they stuck with it.
Right.
And then I could do more.
And that's how you know.
And I could try out more jokes because I wasn't getting booked on anything.
Sure. All right, dude. We did an hour.
It, guys. Holy shit. It flew by.
Yeah. It was unbelievably
fun.
Do
you title the episodes?
I just put your name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Plug your Instagram real quick.
Oh, my Instagram is at Chudier Gew, CHUDIER GEW.
Boom. Yeah, I was gonna say spell that. Yeah. People are not. Dude, how many people have called you Gew? Chudier Gew.
They say Jew. Yeah. Gew, Jew, Gway, Grew. I've gotten. Yeah.
Right on.
But a lot of people say Chudier because they think I'm French.
Yeah, go follow Chudier. I don't ever have people plug dates because I have no idea when this is coming out.
Yeah,
you know how it is.
I mean, pretty much. And
you're like, I don't have any dates anyways.
I don't. Did you not hear the bitter part? I'm a talented comic who doesn't give shit. That's
hell yeah.
all right.
Thanks for being here, dude.
Thanks for having me.